Welcome to another battle report, folks. This is the second one of the weekend where we've been playing live games. This game I'm not actually playing for once. I'll just be concentrating on running the game and managing the cameras for the players. This game is going to feature Tom versus Laurence, and it's going to be a Bagration Soviet versus Bagration German game. So you can hopefully see Tom over in the corner of the screen here. Tom, if you maybe just like to introduce yourself as you're new to the channel, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your experience of playing Flames of War.
Yeah, hi folks. So, been playing Flames of War now for 15 years, I think. The back end of version 2. So, when the army books used to have lovely grey illustrations. So, played through all through version 3. The first army was Soviets, but ended up selling them and then going through the process of rebuying them, like all good war games do. And then version 4, I think, is a really good progression. Version 3 was really good, but it had a lot of nuanced rules that could slow the game down a bit, and I found version 4 to be a lot more action-packed, you could say. And I think the choices with the formations are much better. And then in terms of gaming, so before lockdown, my original home club was Leeds Night Owls. That's where I'm from. But I currently live and work in Glasgow, and my local club here is the G3 Glasgow Club. Both of those clubs you can find on Facebook, and I think they've even got websites. But recently, lockdown, I've been featuring quite a lot on Valley Gaming on YouTube, and I've been following Panzer channel for a long time, and tested him long enough to finally get an entry into a game. So, looking forward to the game.
Right, thanks, Tom. It's really good to have players come in to the channel and see how they play the game, see what kind of list they choose, what tactics that they use, and freshen things up a lot. And as Tom says there, guys, he plays games on Valley Gaming as well, so most of you probably watched that already, but if you don't, search YouTube for Valley Gaming, and I think he's pretty much got one game on a week at the moment. So thank you, Tom. We're now going to go over to Laurence and find out what he's bringing to the game today. Sorry folks, before we go over to Laurence, let's go through Tom's list. So Tom, what kind of information have you got and what units do you have in it?
Okay, so it is a wildcard formation, or command card formation, sorry, that is a forward detachment, and it's a slight edit on a tank formation that allows you that instead of an SMG company, you can have a hero rifle company, and you can also integrate Su-76 light artillery. I think it does prohibit you from taking a third tank platoon off by hand, but essentially what it allows you to do is just to have a very ubiquitous, universal jack of all trades list, really. So it's got a combination of 8 T-34-85s, hero T-34s, good medium tank, backed up with a decent blob of infantry, 6 mortars that you can't really leave home with, and 5 Su-76s in the formation. And the idea is that the Su-76s can bring some light artillery, but also light anti-tank to help cover the infantry advance, because I often feel that they can get picked on by marauding half-tracks and machine guns. And then in the support, there should be 4 IS-2s. I've gone for 4, mainly as a reserve factor, because at 30 points it's them and one of the unit, but also, you know, I think they're the most terrifying thing that Tigers and Panthers are facing these days, and you could argue this is the real meat or the punch of the list. And then finally just some BA-64s, one as a OP, and then just a small unit of 3 to buy some spearhead. So a bit of an all-round list. I think to make it a bit more competitive, you could probably drop the 76s and put some flamethrower T-34s in, but I think it's a good round generally.
Well, thanks, Tom. Now, just to point things out, the issue 76 platoon there looks suspiciously like T-70s, but we're just doing a little bit of proxying. It's something that's always a potential when somebody's playing remotely, and I don't want to say no, you can't use something in your list if it gets the game going, and that's the most important thing just now with this remote playing. So there you go, folks, there's the Soviets. Let's go over to Laurence now and get the Germans. So Tom's opponent today, you can hopefully see over here, is Laurence. So Laurence is, I've played Laurence a lot in the past, but you won't know Laurence at all. So Laurence, if you can maybe just give us a wee introduction to yourself and to your experience with Flames of War.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, my name's Laurence. I live in Paisley, Scotland, just outside Glasgow. I've been playing Flames of War predominantly since version 3. I've seen it at my local club called St Aidan's in Clarkston, Glasgow. So it caught my eye because I was always quite keen on historical wargaming. I started off with the kind of usual potentially American paratroopers because I generally watched Band of Brothers. And from there I attended quite a few tournaments in Frankshop and Livingston quite frequently when it was about. Generally been playing consistently through the last few years. Got version 4, yes, there was always some changes that took some getting used to, but the lockdown has really actually kind of boosted my mojo for getting back into painting and whatnot. Although the games have been limited, it has allowed me to kind of be able to paint a lot more. So I'm now on. I've never had a Soviet list, so I'm painting that up just now. But for today, I'll be playing Germans because they tend to be my go-to army. As I like the tanks predominantly. But so
that's
yeah.
a good reason.
I like the tanks and I like the painting. You can pretty much do any camouflage because no one was there at the time to tell you it was a wrong camouflage. So you can do whatever you like, and it kind of lets you go with your however you want to do it.
Right, lovely. So well, now we're going to go over to Lawrence's list, and he's going to tell us what he's brought today for the game. Right. Oh dear. It's almost like I know what I'm doing now, Laurence. This has gone far too well so far. Something's bound to go horribly wrong. Now you won't be able to see this, right?
Yeah, no problem.
But just go through your list, see what's in your core formation and what you've brought in support, and then after that we'll probably move on to an audio call. Right,
Okay.
I just want to frame the shot. Right, sorry, on you go.
Well, so today I'm fielding an armoured Panzer Grenadier company from the new book, Gratian. In essence, I wanted to try an armoured kind of mechanised list. I've always thought of such a list being able to be proactive in defending or attacking if required. So my list starts off with the Panzer Grenadier Company HQ, which consists of the 2 MG teams armed with a Panzerfaust within the one half-track. I then have 2 platoons of armoured Panzer Grenadiers in their half-tracks, and ultimately they are armed with Panzerfaust, and they are all MG42 teams. One of the squads that I've got does have an additional Panzerstrike in there as well. To kind of conclude my kind of formation, I've got 3 Panzer IV stroke 70s with the big gun, the flat tops we'll call them perhaps today. So quite like these tanks. They're pretty good at defending, and they've got some good armour and ultimately the big guns. So in support for today we've got 4 Marders, I quite like the idea of Marders, 16 points, 1 point more than the Pack 40s. So I think I can consistently go with the Marders if possible going forward. To support them, I've got 3 Wesps. I think the artillery in version 4 has definitely had a boost, in particular mobile artillery. I think it's worked out a lot better for them. I've got an observer and his little Panzer 3, some quad AA anti-aircraft half-tracks, just with some additional machine gun shots for potentially a lot of Soviet troops coming my way. And to round it off, we have a Stuka, a dive bomber flight. Ultimately going with that because I quite like the idea of the iconic plane. I've not overly used planes too much in this version, kind of hit and miss with them as such, but they do add a bit of a, you never know what's going to happen with them, so it's always a bit of an intrigue during the game.
Right, lovely, thanks for that, Laurence. Now, just a couple of things. The plane, as you can probably tell there, is an HS-129 figure and there's only one of them, but once again we're doing a bit of proxying. There is some anti-aircraft in Tom's list. The IS-2s have got anti-aircraft MGs, so if there is an issue where the placement of the second plane might be, we'll deal with that when it comes to it. The anti-aircraft half-tracks, just out of interest, I've probably had them for about 8 years, but this is the first game I've ever played, and then I'm getting close to, I really just need to do a couple of finishing touches and I'll go over how I put it together, but I've got the Panzer III Observer model put together. Right, okay, so we are now going to go over to the game. We'll have to decide on the mission. We'll use the matrix for that, so we'll come back once we have got that all sorted and everything deployed. Right, folks, the mission is Bridgehead. We rolled using the matrix with the manoeuvre chosen by Tom and defend chosen by Laurence. And then Laurence has decided to defend this square here. On table he's got 2 platoons of Grenadiers without their half-tracks at the moment, his Observer, 4 Marders in ambush and a Stuka. So off table in deep immediate reserves he's got his Panzer 470s, his anti-aircraft half-tracks and his Wesps. And then he's placed minefields over there. It doesn't quite block that flank, but it blocks the far edge of it. Minefield in the crossroads and a minefield blocking the exit of the town. And then Tom has put his armoured cars over here and then done as much as possible with the restrictions of the deployment zones, done a spearhead move and deployed around it. You can see he's got T-34s, Company Command and IS-2s. He's got his mortars along here in a lump, which is kind of partly obscured by his Hero motor rifles. Then he's got his Su-76s, which can just deploy in the wood and see out. Some T-34-85s and a wee scout looking to get eyes on that side of the table over there. So that is deployment, folks. We'll come back at the end of Soviet turn 1. Soviet turn 1. So in terms of movement, the infantry dashed up the road, didn't manage to follow me. They dropped off a heavy machine gun in this house. Most of the interesting movement, camera won't quite stretch around, it's wired up everywhere, folks. When we go, you can see the armoured cars are trying to move up to push back ambushes. The T-34s are dashing like mad, but not wanting to stick their noses out too far. Company Command's in a position to support the T-34s and the IS-2s that are kind of forming a bit of an all-round defence against the potential for reserves arriving this turn. The scout moved up behind that building there with a blue roof. Not a scout, observer, so we've got line of sight on that side of the table from next turn. These guys are staying put. Then in terms of shooting, the 76s lifted their ranged in, marker to try and range in. I'll just put my finger down on that platoon there to get 6 bases, but failed. But the mortars managed to range in here. They managed to get 2 hits on this lot, no hits on the company command, or 1 hit on the lot behind, but this turn they've all saved. But that's it ranged in now, so there'll be reroll successful saves. So that's it for Soviet turn 1. So over to Laurence for his turn 1, where he will have to consider ambushes and then roll for reserves. In turn 1, so he decided not to pop his ambush, but Laurence didn't get any reserves this turn. He backed off his observer. Oh, incidentally unpinned the 2 platoons that got hit by the mortars. And then he got the plane, and the plane came in and was really quite antisocial. He got 3 hits on the Su-76s, killing 2, bailing 1, and he got a couple of hits, I can't quite remember, but he killed 2 of the infantry too. And then these Grenadiers lifted up, they got on the ground, fired, and then got 9 hits, killing 2 more bases there. So it is kind of first blood to the Soviets, but then it is hero motor rifles and Su-76s, so they're probably the softest target on the table. We'll see what Tom can do in revenge. Soviet turn 2. So the bailed out Su-76 got back in, the infantry unpinned. In terms of movement, these guys cross-checked over here to get into range of these infantry. The guys dug in. They felt, quite rightly, that they were very, very exposed. The wee armoured car observer is moved up to look behind the wood. Then over here, the B-10s have moved up to provide some MG support to the tanks. The tanks move towards the hill with a tactical, and that's a T-34, sorry. And the IS-2s moved up a tactical, tried to follow me, and it didn't really work. Commander's out by himself. Then in terms of shooting, the mortars managed to kill the second in command. The Su-76s managed to range in and got a base of infantry, and then the T-34s managed to get 1 hit on the Shrek, which was a kill. So dead Shrek, the back door is a wee bit open there, so a bit of payback for Laurence this turn, for Tom this turn. So German turn 2, so what happened in that turn? The infantry are all unpinned. The ambush was popped over there. It had to be quite far back on that hill just because the forward T-34s were within 4 inches of the crest. So it was just back into that corner, but they could still get in a position to get 3 of the T-34s, 1 at an IS-2. No reserves arriving, but the plane, as you can see behind there, it came in. So the infantry all stayed put as well. And in terms of shooting, there was 1 hit off anti-aircraft fire against the plane, but it saved. And then the plane managed to drop the bombs on 3 ISs and 1 T-34 HQ. There was 2 hits on the ISs, 1 saved, and then Tom, being a man of steely nerves, decided to use his make your own luck card to make sure the other one survived. And then the Marders shooting at the T-34s managed to get 4 hits. They killed 2 and got 2 bails. 1 was a matched save, the other one was a failed firepower on a kill. And then the Marder number 4 shot and tickled the IS-2 platoon command. So quite a lot of shooting there. Poor T-34s might though get back in and dish some revenge, but the main thing is all of the ISs are in a position to... Oh, sorry, Laurence failed his shooting scoot. So that was very bad end to the turn, at least. So the IS-2s may well come in and do some punishing. So that's it. We're over to Tom for Soviet turn 3. Soviet turn 3, well, there's a lot going on in Soviet turn 3. First of all, let's start here. Those T-34s cross-checked up to here to get a line of sight on the hill where the Marders were. The T-34s that were in front of the hill along with the company command, moved to the side of the Marders to negate cover, and the IS-2 stayed put. The BA-10s got a rush of blood to the head and moved up to an assault position. And then in terms of shooting, the mortars kept chipping away. The ISU-70 didn't kill anything. The SU-76s killed a base. And then in shooting, I think everybody had a go at these. I think it was a combination of all of those platoons eventually wiped out the Marders, including these T-34s here. So they're all gone now. They're all clobbered and burning wrecks. The IS-2s did a wee shooting scoot to move up a bit. One's gone up on the hill. And then in the assault, I've not left a marker there, but they guys managed to put 3 armoured cars into one base. One got bailed on the way in. They killed a base of infantry. The Germans, motivated, came in using a Faust, killed an armoured car, failed to kill another one, but then Tom broke off. Now Laurence chose to go back to his foxhole, so he couldn't capture the second armoured car, but he got one of them. So Laurence is getting reserves, whatever the hell happens next turn, and I think he needs them now. Turn 3, so one of the infantry platoons didn't unpin, these ones here. There was 2 reserves came on, Panzer 470Vs, just around there, and you can't see them. I can't bring the camera over because we're connected to the live setup at this moment, folks. Oh, there you go. There you go. So there are 3 Wesps hiding behind the church. And that was it from no other movement. Infantry stayed put. So the Panzer 470Vs arrived with 3 shots, needing 3s behind the IS-2s. Got 2 hits. One was a failed save, and one you see on the edge of the table there. Tom rolled a 6. So that one got bailed. The one on the hill got killed. So they actually, that's probably a fairly average outcome, to be honest, but they survived that okay. It could have gone a lot worse. Worst case scenario is they could have lost all 3, but they're still very much in the fight over there. So over to Tom now for his turn 4. Soviet turn 4. So a lot happened there. You guys can keep me straight if I miss anything. So infantry and T-34s moved up to approach the objective from the front. The other T-34s moved up into the cornfield to get out of line of sight of the Panzer 470s and launch an assault. The IS-2s did the same by going over the towards the crest of the hill, ready to pour over the hill. Oh, incidentally, the armoured car, it got back in, the bailed out one, but the commander was not within command distance because he got forced away from the previous assault and then he ran away. So that's 2 armoured cars gone. And then in terms of shooting, the mortars and 76 mils ranged in over there. I can't remember, did they actually kill anything? No, they just pinned. Yeah, so there was a hell of a lot of shooting going on, and everybody was pinned by the time it came to launch assaults, and this is where it got really bloody. Starting with the IS-2s, one got bailed out on the way in. Then there was a couple of rounds of combat where 2 German infantry bases got killed, but they managed to bail out the surviving ISs and then capture them. The T-34s were forced away as part of the end of the assault phase, pushed away from the cornfield over to the other side, and they went in for an absolute monster of an assault, which, as you can see there, ended up with, how many turns of combat was that, guys? Was it about 4?
It must have been 4, yeah.
Yeah, it was about 4 rounds of combat, and the T-34s hung in and hung in and hung in, but the Faust just chewed their way through them in the end. And there's only 2 bases infantry left alive from that platoon, and it was, I think it was, they'd only lost 1 base before then, so they probably lost about 5 bases infantry. 4 bases infantry, sorry, in that assault. But in the end, the Faust did it. And the Faust did it everywhere, to be honest. There was 3 Fausts involved in the fight against the IS-2s, and just the one in the T-34s, that's probably why it took 4 turns. But both sides kept in that, they kept passing the motivation to company command close enough to mount a reroll, and it went down till there was just nothing left. 2 on one side, none on the other. So there you go, that kind of brutal end to a brutal assault. So German turn 5. So in the starting step, the survivors from this platoon legged it, the survivors in this platoon stayed. The remaining reserves came on, which is these 2 anti-aircraft half-tracks. Nothing much else moved apart from the Panzer 470Vs who blitzed into firing position here, and then they shot and managed to get 2 of the T-34s. The artillery ranged in, the Wesps are finally doing something here, but didn't cause any casualties. And then the Panzer 470Vs, shooters and scouted, moving towards this objective. That's it for German turn 5. Soviet turn 5, so on that turn the infantry unpinned, but the hero T-34 legged it. So the mortars and the 76s, with the help of that observer on the flank, managed to kill a base of infantry, so that platoon's down to 1 base. And then the heroes ran up, managed to get in the assault. There was 8 shots to counter fire, but only 4 hits. They lost 1 on the way in, and then they killed the company command. And he wasn't close enough to do any kind of hero saves or anything. And then Tom has pulled back to try and get some cover from his wood. So there's not much left on either side, to be honest. I think what might as well do just now is, whilst we're on camera here, make a last stand check for your infantry stand, Laurence?
Yeah, 4.
4, so he's staying. So that infantry stand and the Panzer 470s keeps the game going. German turn 5, so the sole surviving infantrymen stayed, didn't unpin. In terms, the plane came in this turn. So the infantryman has moved from here and is running and hiding behind wrecks on that hill, because if he goes, that's it. Then the Panzer 470s, the half-tracks, all moved up, and these guys got absolutely smashed to bits by everything, and it wasn't until the Panzer 470s opened up with their heavy machine guns that actually failed any saves, and 3 went. And then over here, all 3 of these got hit, 2 passed a save, 1 died. So they're still in good spirits. Those guys are still in good spirits, but there's not much left on either side. Let's go over to Soviet turn 6. So folks, what's turned out to be the last turn of the game, Tom has decided he was going to give one last attempt to break the German company, and if it didn't work, to concede defeat. So what happened was, he kept his infantry in place to contest the objective, which really left him only one way of killing this guy here, and that was artillery, but he survived. I think he only had 1 save to make, and he passed it. And then Laurence had to make his company, his last stand check for his formation to stay on the table, and he did. So, on the basis that these guys would probably be shot to bits by the remaining weapons, Tom has graciously conceded. So let's go over to the players and get their thoughts on the game, and then I'll do a little recap myself. Folks, there you go. That was one hell of a bloodbath, I have to say. Very entertaining from that point of view, to see it developing, and hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Before I go over to my own wee recap though, let's go over to Tom in the first instance to let us know what his thoughts were on the game, and what his own recap looks like. Over to you, Tom.
Alright, so I guess you could say that the plan went to plan, broadly speaking, in that the the fancy flanking manoeuvre, managed to charge over the hill and look all dramatic. And I was able to manipulate where I wanted the Marders to ambush, i.e. wherever Laurence decided to ambush, there was crossfire of anti-tank weaponry. So I think I managed to mitigate that quite well. And the artillery did okay. I was expecting it to do a bit more damage to the Panzer Grenadiers before the charge. But say the Russian artillery can rely totally to destroy dug-in Germans. They are quite frustrating. But as it turns out, even IS-2s can't charge into 3 different forms of Panzerfaust. So, you know, I was relying on a bit of lady luck in that Laurence was going to fail a counterattack, particularly in the early stages of combat. But it came quite close down to the wire in the end. Now, things that I would do differently, I said this at the beginning of the game when Frank was helping me deploy. I said, in my experience, try not to be too clever when attacking. And I think that was the downfall of my plan. I was trying to be too clever. And by that, I'm referring to the flanking attack of my T-34s and the IS-2s. And the idea was that I could make that flanking manoeuvre, then isolate any reserve units that come on, and then press on to the main attack on the objective. Where, in fact, what I should have done is, I actually discussed this option with Frank, is that I should have deployed the IS-2s on the very corner of my deployment, and they really should have just driven straight towards the Panzer Grenadier platoon that was on the outset of the road. And that is because A, they're more or less immune to the Marder ambush. So regardless of where the Marders are going to come on, they could more or less bounce those rounds off. And B, the way that he deployed his initial Panzer Grenadier platoon, on that side of the battlefield there were some isolated infantry teams. So you'd only be taking 1 Panzerfaust at a go, but you could quite happily charge 1 to 2 teams in every assault, and more than likely you would kill them, meaning that he's having to churn through a lot of infantry teams just to try to attack you. That in combination with the artillery and oncoming hero rifles, then you know that would really overwhelm that objective. And then the flanking attack should really just consisted of 4 T-34s, and they just become a distraction. In that when these Panzer IVs turn up, they just try hold them off for a couple of turns. They'll probably die in doing so, but if I can delay them for 2 turns, maybe kill 1 or 2 of them, then that's a fair points exchange. And then it's just about trying to mitigate where the other central T-34s would go in trying to help the main thrust. And I think this is also something that I've learned, and I didn't really put into practice in this game, is when you're attacking, try build up the attack. And I think almost think of it as like Russian folk music. You know, it starts very slow, and then it slowly builds up, and then it gets more frantic. And I think that's how you need to develop the attack, particularly if you've got 2 or more artillery pieces. So don't try to get to objectives before the reserves. I see this in many, let's say, less experienced players when they're attacking. They're desperate to get to the objective before reserves turn up. And I was guilty of this to some degree with the massive outflanking manoeuvre. And I think, particularly if the defender's got scattered reserves, then he can't decide where they're coming on. So again, you play a little bit of lady luck, but you let your artillery build up. You get your first turn, you just get into what I'd say pre-assault positions. So I too eagerly moved up my hero rifles into machine machine gun range and things such as that, and they took unnecessary casualties. So first turn, they only needed to move probably only 4 inches, try and get some bulletproof cover, and then turn 2, once the IS-2s have encroached a bit further, then they make the dash towards the main assault line. Again, your artillery's coming in, it's adding that casualties to the 1st Panzer Grenadier platoon, and you also structure the artillery bombardments to try and cut off any infantry reinforcements, because then they have to run through an already ranged in template. And then I bring up the T-34s along with them, the centred T-34s with the HQ. And hopefully all that plus the outflanking manoeuvre just adds too much pressure and too many fronts for Laurence to adequately deal with. Even if his Panzer 470s came on turn 2, they've got lots of options to try and engage with. So I think that was my takeaway for improving the Russian attack. I think if I was going to change the list a bit, I think perhaps you could make an argument for dropping the 70s Tixes for the flamethrower T-34s. I think they're probably the most potent Russian unit in the book. They're fast, they give you a light anti-tank option, they've got machine guns, and then flamethrower action. You add that to a list that's probably a little bit light on medium tanks anyway. All of a sudden you've got many more fast manoeuvring threats, but I think the Su-76s rely on me hitting dug-in Germans, which can be a bit hit and miss. But so yeah, that was my perspective from a Russian attack. Just to mention a few clubs and things. So as you can probably tell, I'm not a native to Scotland. So I come from Leeds. And my gaming club there is Leeds Night Owls, so I've been going there since I was about 14. So I think that's over half my life now, which is quite a scary thing to admit. But yeah, great club. They've got their website and their Facebook page. Always looking for new members. Greatly run. And I always try to go when I'm back home. Then my local club in Glasgow is G3. Again, really great set of lads. They've got a great local council venue, so it's dead cheap membership and subs. They're suffering a little bit in lockdown, so it's a bit delayed, but again, they've got a great Facebook presence and a really active Facebook presence as well, yeah, amongst the members and the council, the guys that run it. And then, yeah, online wise, I've become an active member with Valley Gaming, which is a YouTube channel. So a guy down in Wales runs that channel. He started doing some battle reports, and I just started talking to him, and then we got into discussing online battles. So I played him a few times, and me and another chap called Lucas have got an online linked campaign going on at the moment, based on Operation Cobra. And yeah, and that's really fun. You get to see a different perspective about how people play the game. And then lastly, since lockdown is slowly retreating, the Games Hub in Edinburgh is hosting an event on the 9th of May, I think, which I think is a Sunday. And they're doing a little 90-point mid-war free-for-all tournament. And again, I haven't been to a Games Hub that often. I've only been for a couple of local tournaments, but it's a really good little venue, and a really nice atmosphere. So yeah, some lots of extra vocational activities, one can say.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Tom. That was a really good breakdown of how the game went for you, and a few ideas for what you might change in terms of even in the list building. And we all know how much we enjoy building lists and trying them out. It's a really important part of the game. But thanks again, Tom, for coming along and playing. We'll have you back, and next time, hopefully, if you kill that many Germans, you'll actually get a win. Right, folks, so we've had a quick chat with Tom. Let's now go over to Laurence and see what his thoughts were on the game.
So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was, it's really good and refreshing to play again, and ultimately it was a very close run thing. Every dice roll at the end could have perhaps changed the outcome of the game itself. Good to play Tom, not played before, so it's good to try out and learn from new people as such. So it was just a really good game. I think when I set out my list, I kind of thought I would go with the half tracks in the case that perhaps I'd be faced with a big blob of infantry. But in essence, it was quite a tank heavy list I was coming up against. So when choosing minefields and whatnot, I think my theory was trying to prevent him deploying a certain way to make sure that perhaps that he was only going to come from one direction. I didn't really account for the fact that he would outflank going around the church as such, but in essence, it was a decision I would ponder whether or not I would need to put minefields closer to my objectives instead of kind of nullifying his deployment options as such. But I think my list was generally okay. It was good that I predominantly used the three squads quite close together to ensure that they got the benefit of each other. So when the IS-2 tanks came in and also the other units of tanks, there was at least potentially 2 or 3 Panzerfaust going at them at each time. So, I felt that was probably one of my better moves in terms of deployment to ensure that that could take place, because otherwise, if I was only facing one, if I only had one to use out, it would have been it was literally a straight road to Berlin, perhaps, for Tom. My list, first time I used airplane for a while, the first time it came on, I was like, giddy up. This was really good, really effective, and I think in hindsight I should have perhaps kept on that same target of perhaps, focused down on one unit at a time instead of trying to put out fires across the table. It was really perhaps just to focus on the one unit, so that was one thing I'd probably change going forward. It was frustrating not having the Wests on the table from the start. They only came on, and I think they only potentially had one round of shooting, perhaps 2 at the most. I was unlucky with my reserves because I only got a reserve once I had the 3 dice to do so. My ambush of the Marders, I kind of thought before the game that taking tanks over Pack 4s was the best idea, but in essence it's just a bit of a lottery as to what you're going to face, because perhaps in that game the Pack 4s would have been better because I would have had the 3 up plus save. But they took out 2 tanks, so I think that was a bit of a mistake. I was tempted to potentially move the Pack 4s into the woods, so when he did assault he didn't have to face the 4 Marders when he was coming into contact. So, but overall I think it was skin in my teeth. I kept rolling to stay on, which was quite unusual when needing a 4 up to do so, especially when you're required to do so for counter assaults and also kind of motivations. I think it played on me a lot better because I was able to motivate to a counter attack, and I think I've not played a game whereby I think so many counter attacks were made by either side. So it's just really a good fun game, and it just came down to one potential roll, because what I had left on the table was 1 wee man. I did have plenty of supports, but my formation was destroyed, whereas Tom, I think his formation was still pretty intact, but fundamentally didn't really have any units left to attack with. So yeah, just a really good game, and another one under the belt to then think about for the next time, to think what I would do differently. In essence, I'm hoping with lockdown coming to an end potentially, I would highly recommend anyone to look out St Aidan's Warriors, a group based in Clarkston, Glasgow. They're on Facebook and whatnot, and there is players that play Flames of War. So if anyone's interested, you can contact me through Frank, or even have a look on the St Aidan's Warriors, because the game's extremely good, it's well supported, really fun to play. You don't have to go into it thinking of competitions to be competitive. It's just merely a time to enjoy our hobby and just be able to get some time away from the house and whatnot, but also meet new people and play a game where you don't have to be competitive to have a good time. So yeah, check it out at St Aidan's Warriors.
Well, thanks for that, Laurence, and thanks for playing today. It was a brilliant game. I enjoyed watching it, and I think everybody else on the channel would enjoy watching the game too.
Thank you, Fred.
I thought it might be good to visually appreciate the losses compared to what survived in that game. So for the Soviets, that's what survived. Mortars, couple of Su-76s, their observer, 4 bases infantry, including the heavy machine gun and commissar. And then losses, you can see 8 T-34s, 4 IS-2s, 3 Amakars, 3 Su-76s, and 8 bases of Hero motor rifles. So that was a hard attack. And then for the Germans, surviving, got 1 base of infantry, 3 Panzer 470Vs, 3 Wesps, anti-aircraft half-track. Oh, the planes, don't forget the planes. And probably the funniest bit of the whole game was the observer, who sat in that complete total cauldron of death and destruction, just kept his head down and looked up after it all finished and went, "Whew, nobody's seen me." She survived completely intact. And then losses, a complete platoon of infantry, a platoon of infantry and a Shrek, but the commander survived, remember. Company HQ, 4 Marders and 1 half-track. So that's a hell of a lot of losses. Though when you look at what was left on the German side, I suppose they did have a bit more left at the end of the day. It's just the formation was very, very, very shaky in terms of platoons. But as far as a recap on my part goes, folks, would I have done anything different? I think I would put my IS-2s up the table. I think I would have considered a flank attack, not necessarily as quick as Tom's went in, but a nice pincer with the IS-2s and the T-34s. I think that would have been an okay tactic. And then try and time the attack of the infantry so that they would be not going into the teeth of the fire as they were. But otherwise, that's about the only change I would have done there. For the Germans, well, it's a tricky table to defend on, folks, for this mission, because right up the middle here, there's no major terrain features. So I understand why Laurence chose the hill. I don't know if I would have chose that side. I might have gone for this side just for a better field of fire. The town would protect the flank. It'd be very easy to tie that up. There's very little ways through that, so there's a little prospect of tanks getting through, infantry potentially, but tanks would not really get through there. And then on this side you don't have the hill, but you do have a more open field of fire. So the Panzer 470Vs on the table at the start, that might well have started causing tank casualties from turn 1. But there you go, folks. A very bloody game. Well done to the observer. I will be doing a very short video on how I made the Panzer III observer tank, folks. But thanks to Tom, thanks to Laurence, thanks to you guys for watching, thanks to you subscribers, and we'll hopefully see you on the next one.